There are so many goods and services that a typical household decides to purchase or not, and we've got to find a way to average all those prices into one price, and then what we're looking at is taking the percentage change of that price versus what it was a year ago. So how do you take the average of all of these goods and services that a household will purchase? Because ultimately what we're after is we're trying to understand how specific prices impact households from a welfare standpoint. So we tend to like to weigh goods and services that are utilized by a typical household at a higher frequency than others. So for instance, the price of milk or the price of water is something that would be pretty important to a household versus the price of, luxury exotic automobile or something like that. Right? So we're looking at footprint of impact on a typical household. There are some necessities that households can't really get away from, including medical expenses, insurance expenses, energy, food, things like that have all experienced a pretty heavy uptick. So what we find is that households aren't going to say, I'm not going to do any type of Christmas shopping this year or any type of holiday shopping. What they're going to do is they might reformulate their budget and what is allowed for them to shop. So the holidays tend to happen at the end of the year, and so they'll see what's left over in their budget by the end of the year, and they say, well, let's spend X amount of this budget on holiday shopping, and we'll have a little bit left over to start the new year, and hopefully our tax return comes in right around then, and the process repeats itself ad infinitum. So we could expect that two countervailing forces. One is households are eager to go out and shop in person again. So last year was a pretty good year for online shopping. This year, as I'm reading markets, it looks like households are going to actually try to do a lot more in-person shopping than they've been doing in the past couple of years. The inflation is a pretty high concern of a lot of households. Last I read, the statistic was around 40% of households in surveys say that inflation is definitely going to impact the way that they're going to do their holiday shopping this year. Meaning they're probably going to be looking for more deals, things of that nature. So we can see that energy prices, necessities increase, that tightens their budgets, and then what's left over is a little bit less than what has happened classically. The largest sticker shock is definitely going to be travel expenses. So households that are going to be planning on doing some traveling, I think the joke is that you want to get a credit card that has mileage on it, spend the extra mileage money on prices that are inflated during the year, and then use the mileage to pay for your airline ticket by the end of the year, because those airline tickets are going to be very, very expensive. So if I had to pick one category of sticker shock, it would definitely be with traveling. Secondary that I don't think people are really taking into consideration is businesses, especially let's say in restaurants and the service sector, they are hesitant to change the prices on their menus. And so what a savvy business owner might do is they might decide to bundle their ingredients, perhaps maybe not using premium products like they were before. They're going to bake a bowl of ravioli for their customers, but they might not use the really expensive ingredients. They might use maybe a step below or something. So this is something I think that's been colloquially coined shrinkflation, where the prices don't necessarily change, but what you're actually getting is less. So there's an implicit increase in the price because the quantity's less and it's the same price. So in fact, the prices have gone up, but it's something a little bit more subtle. And people who do traveling and then they go out to maybe their favorite restaurant, there's a chance that they might notice that the food is not the same as it was before, and it could, maybe they won't, I don't know, but that's something that they probably, I wouldn't be surprised if people started commenting on. In specific sectors such as, let's say clothing, electronics, some of those like TVs, books even. In the past, we had shortages in some of those categories because of the pandemic, what happened with the supply chain. So we're not seeing as much of a bottleneck this year. So there's sort of a reverse arms race with a lot of retailers, in that they know that the households are going to be strapped for cash because of the, some of the issues I brought up earlier, as far as what's left over after they pay for all their expenses over the year might be a little bit less than what has been in past years. So I think a lot of retailers will be offering more incentives in those categories for people to come in and buy. So I think shoppers can anticipate some pretty good deals during Black Friday, especially. Maybe even earlier than that. Black Friday has been sort of if you want to think of it, the opening ceremonies of the shopping season, but I think retailers are going to be a little bit more strategic with some of the offers they make, and part of that is they're going to try to get those shoppers a little bit earlier, because they know that they're going to have as much cash as they will early on. They don't want to wait, give those deals later on when customers have sort of extinguished all of their money. So you can anticipate, I think, sales in those types of categories that maybe last year we didn't see because of the pandemic. So this is where I might differ from some of my colleagues in macroeconomics, where I tend to look for perhaps maybe overly simplistic explanations for things. So I've always looked at the price of oil for when I want to look at what the CPI, which is the one of these weighted average of prices, is going to do, or the one index that people tend to use a lot more now, which is called the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index. Mouthful. So when you run these models and you look at, I ran one this morning, which you look at, you tend to see that when you look at the inflation rate of the price of oil, what you tend to see is that these price indexes tend to mimic what happens in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 months following that. So when you look at trying to model when oil will stabilize, that answer to that question probably comes from when oil will stabilize. And so if we just let things happen the way they will, we can look at prices stabilizing probably sometime towards the end of next year, right? Now, the run-up in the price of oil we've seen has a lot to do with some factors that I tend to shy away from, more geopolitical factors. So we could see resolutions happen to some of the uncertainties overseas, and then we'll see a very quick response with maybe some of the the futures markets with oil really giving us an indication that things are going to be definitely settling a little bit quicker than that. But as far as uncertainty goes, when that uncertainty remains unresolved, you're going to see it reflected in the price of oil. Because again, oil is one of these things which impacts every aspect of our lives. It impacts, airlines think of these things 2 years ahead of time. So we tend to see that if there is any type of uncertainty with the price of oil, airlines will really jump on trying to secure the prices of oil that they have to pay ahead of time, and that ends up driving prices up for a lot of other people. And that's just one category of people who do this, organization that does this. You see a lot of large corporations also engage in what are called futures contracts. They really want to sort of lock the price of oil in the future for them, because they don't want to really, hit that shock 2 years down the road. And what ends up happening is the price of oil today reflects that expectation. So as long as the uncertainty is there, you're going to get an escalated price in today's terms. And so that's going to trickle into our goods and services that we pay for right now. And we're going to not see resolution for that until, I think, in my opinion, the price or oil market settles. And that could take a little bit of time, unfortunately.